Hi, everyone. I'm very excited to be here giving this talk/workshop. Just a heads up, there will be an interactive portion and a little making portion. So if you have a pen, some scissors, and a piece of paper, you'll need them at some point to create your own little mini zine. You can grab those now, or you can grab them while I'm talking. That'll be in the latter part of the program. So where to start? One of the things that I worked on when I was at Elsewhere was cinematriarchy, which is this larger idea that I had had for, I don't know, years, but had not had the time or space to work on until I was at the artist residency. And really it was focusing my attentions and the attentions of others on female filmmakers. I went to film school. I have an MFA in film from Temple. And while I was there, I watched maybe like 2 movies that were made by women and read one extremely dense theoretical text and about female filmmakers. And that was basically it. And then I was teaching filmmaking in middle and high school and was basically just like looking for resources that were more accessible, not so theory driven, and that people from all backgrounds could interact with more easily. Film can get like super snobby sometimes and is seen as like a rarefied art form, but it's also fun, and there's also just like a ton of it now. So that started my sort of cinematriarchy journey, and I made this little zine, my stay in Elsewhere, very spur of the moment and off the top of my head. And when Carolina asked me to talk about it, I was like, oh, was that interesting? Okay, cool. So I made a little presentation for you all and a way to think about movies in a slightly different way. And I also have a case study, and then you will also do your own case study. So I'm going to share my screen with you and walk you through a little presentation. Okay. All right, here we go. Grab your things. How to watch a movie, a working theory. Everything is subject to change. First of all, hello, I'm Sarah Greenleaf. I have a picture of Dorothy Arzner on here. She was the only female director working in the 1930s. Here's my website, sarahgreenleaf.com, where you can find me and more about my work. And here we go. So this is how I used to watch movies. Everyone together in a darkened theater with a beautiful glowing screen. At some point, I think hopefully we will all watch movies together again, but that's not the only way to watch movies anymore. There's like a lot going on. People are watching movies on their phone, watching movies on tablets, you're watching movies on streaming services. And I know that my attention span is currently trash. So that's one of the things that led me to start making this zine, is I was noticing that I was watching things that I maybe wanted to watch, maybe didn't want to watch, but I would be on my phone, I'd be playing games, be like doing 2 dots. But having these really bad attention spans is not great for time-based media, especially for films, which are contained stories within a specific time. And one of the things that I found was that because I was always distracted when I was watching a lot more stuff that I didn't really like, because it didn't matter because I was doing something else or I was on my computer. And I decided that I wasn't into that anymore. So here are some things that I came up with that help me watch movies. Make popcorn. That's my personal preference because I love it, but have some other snacks, make it a moment. Put down your phone, which I know is really hard to do. But I think really the most important one that I came up with was, if you don't like it, stop watching. You don't need to watch any terrible content. I mean, there's so much stuff out there, and there's so many new things being made all the time that your watching time is extremely limited, and the amount of things to watch grows exponentially every day. So if you don't like it, you don't have to watch it. You can just stop, find something else. I will say though, that one of the problems I found is I feel like the algorithms that are suggesting movies to me aren't really working for me anymore. While I do love a movie that features a strong female lead, what they think that movie is like extremely vast and very bad sometimes. So I was trying to come up with a way to basically create my own self algorithm so I could start to figure out like, what do I actually want to watch movies about? This is the dissection part. So you can watch more of what you like as you investigate why you like it. One of the things that I started trying to do is do exactly that, create a self algorithm, figure out why I like what I like. It's also very helpful as an artist and a filmmaker to see what you like. And if there's nothing else like that, then maybe you could fill that spot yourself. So there are a lot of different ways that you can analyze a film. This way that I've come up with is for people who are watching movies, like consumers of films. You can get a degree in film theory if you want. That is not my jam, and it's very expensive. So there are many other ways to learn about films and to get a sense of what your own taste is. One of the things I will mention is what happens if you hate something that everybody else likes or says is important. That's totally fine. It doesn't matter. I think what does matter is to figure out why you don't like something or what it is about it that's not interesting to you. And also to remember that a lot of things are important just because they were the first one to do something. Doesn't mean they did it the best, or that they aren't super problematic in some way. But yeah, a lot of times it just means that they tried it first, or they got recognition for trying it first. That's another big thing. If you don't like something that's important or beloved, it doesn't mean you have bad taste. It just means that it's not to your taste. So I'm going to do a case study of how I've started thinking about movies and breaking them down. I'm going to use one of my favorite movies, and by favorite movies, I do not mean the movie that I tell people I love to impress them. When I do that, I tell them Run Lola Run, because that's a great movie, and also very like cinema-y. But this is one of the movies that I've like watched hundreds of times. I used to listen to the soundtrack when I was like working in high school, so I have like a very deep connection to this movie. So I'm using Practical Magic. This is the one with the witches. The first thing that I look at when I'm thinking about it and breaking it down is who's on screen. In Practical Magic, the people who are on screen are women. They're the center of everything. There are sisters, aunts, daughters, nieces, friends, and enemies. There's a lot of like interesting female relationships going on. There are some men. There is a romantic bad boy who is actually bad and a nice sheriff. They move the plot forward, but it doesn't, like, it's not about them. They're there and that's like fine and stuff is happening, but the movie is really about these relationships between these women. Where is the film set? This Practical Magic is ostensibly set in Massachusetts, you know, witches, Salem, etc. But it's actually filmed in the San Juan Islands of the Pacific Northwest, which is near where I grew up. So that was very exciting to me to find out. I'm also obsessed with this house. It's very magical. And the other thing that is, the other part of the setting for this movie is that it's a small town. There's like a PTA meeting, that's a big scene. And the household is multi-generational, which I really love. Another thing to think about is how was light used to create the images. This is basically just a different way of saying, talk about the cinematography or what do you notice about it. One of the things I love about Practical Magic is it's a very warm movie. even in scenes that are like very dark and bad things are happening, the lighting is always really warm, and especially on the women. There's also a lot of like, there's a lot of candles going on because witches. Did any costumes or sets stand out? For me, yes, all of it. This is one of those movies that for me was like formative to my like sense of style identity. It's like very 90s. The house is like super chaotic and there's stuff everywhere, and it like looks like people live there. You know, there's a lot of there's a lot of movies that have like a very specific aesthetic to their homes, like Nora Ephron movies, like, you know, you're in a Nora Ephron kitchen, like it's a thing. There are tumblers about it. This one in particular I love because it just like looks so lived in, and it looks like they're always doing some sort of interesting experiments. They also have a greenhouse that's like a room of the house, which I think is pretty amazing. Another thing to think about is how was the sound and the music. This is interesting. I had never actually thought about the sound in this movie before, but when bad things are happening, there's this sort of like thrum that goes on, and these like eerie, ethereal sound effects, which I think later on, it sort of like is a precursor to the very sort of like dark thrumming that you get in like season 1 of The Handmaid's Tale or some like bigger action movies now. These sort of like, things are bad, things are going badly, it's very low. It's an indicator that something's not going well. But the music, the soundtrack is great. It's Marvin Gaye, there's Stevie Nicks, there's a Faith Hill song. It's a fun mix of contemporary music of the time, and then it has these throwbacks to like the 60s and 70s. And which was interesting because that's part of this film that I never really thought about before I was making the slide deck for this presentation. Another thing to think about is what is the arc and what happened. I think this is a longer version, but if I were like writing it for zine size, I'd be like, 2 sisters, one grieving, get together to deal with the other sister's abusive boyfriend. They kill him twice. It's like, so you can have it be very, you can be very, very sort of pared down basically to the log line of the film. It's a way of thinking about like, what are the basics of a plot, what happens, who is motivated and who is acting. In this one, it's really the sisters are acting and then reacting to one another. Jillian basically is causing problems and Sally is trying to solve them. And then at some point refuses to solve them anymore. Another question that I like to ask is what rang true? Like, what are the things in the film that I was like, oh yeah, like I know that to be true. Or like that's a thing I've seen, or that's a thing that resonates with me. For this movie, it was the sister relationship, the multi-generational household, and all the women who come together at the end to banish this bad man. I really loved all those parts. And those all were like things that I had seen happen in my own life, although it wasn't, like a seance. Some other additional questions that are from the zine. How did it make you feel? Was there anything new or exciting to you within the film? That could be anything. Like, for example, the first time I saw Run Lola Run, it's the same story and it happens 3 different times, and slight changes in them change the outcome. And I'd never seen that happen before. I'd never seen a non-linear film. And I remember that blowing my mind. And then part of starting to think about movies that you want to watch and ways to sort of curate your own film slate is to, if you love any of the performances of the actors, then check out something else featuring that actor. The same thing goes for the director, the cinematographer, the composer, etc. Sometimes, especially with people like cinematographers or composers, their there's not really an auteur theory for them, but you can find some interesting connections between their work sometimes. Actors are fun. A lot of times their movies are all over the place. I did a Sandra Bullock deep dive in early quarantine, which was extremely fun. And I watched most of her movies. They're all extremely different. So once I watched this movie and sort of like analyzed it, here's the little like a bingo board, I guess, of things that I found within that were things that I liked. And I was like, okay, these are things that I'm going to look for other media pieces that incorporate them. So I have, you can see I have a bunch of them, but I have things like aunts and nieces. That one was really interesting because I was trying to think about how many movies I had seen that featured aunt-niece relationships. And I could think of one TV show, and that was literally it. A House with a Greenhouse Indoors, romance as a subplot, Midnight Margaritas, which if you've seen the movie is a very fun scene where they all dance around. Road trips, curses, female frenemies. So instead of like going into the, I don't know, the abyss of the strong female character recommendation and being upset when I didn't like a lot of those movies that I thought I would, these are some other ways for me to start searching for films that I want to watch and things I want to think about. Islands, super fun, interesting. Music from the 60s and 70s. So that's a way I sort of like broke down and then broke out all of these different things. All right, so before we get to all of these questions, I am going to come back to all of you. And if you guys could drop, oh yeah, everyone needs to watch Practical Magic. You are welcome. Sorry, I couldn't see the chat. If everyone wants to, so think about a movie that you like, you love. It can be super embarrassing. I do not judge. Find some, like, think about what that movie, like, I would say like it's a movie you watched at least 5 times. It's not a movie you saw once. What's that movie for you? And hold it in your mind. You can put it in the chat actually, if you can think of it. And then once you have that movie in your head, I'm going to go through essentially how to make the zine, and then we'll go back and you will analyze your own movie that you chose. So,
wait, sorry, can you say that again? We're dropping the movie.
Oh yeah, can you put the movie in the chat? Ooh, I'm also doing this to source movie recommendations, just FYI. Nice. Oh, I haven't heard of some movies. Okay, if you watch a movie 3 times, try that. Someone hasn't watched a movie 5 times. Millicent is not doing the comfort viewing that I'm doing. Or just something you like. Okay, great. We have some good ones. We have Avalon, Garbage Warrior, City of Women, Tommy Boy, Train Spotting, Twilight. Don't be sorry about Twilight. Own it. Takes place in the Pacific Northwest. I should watch it. It relates to my my Matrix. Okay, cool. So if you all have a piece of paper, I'm going to show you a very quick and dirty way to make a zine. That one? Okay, cool. All right, so the first thing you have to do, you can have colored paper, you can have white paper, doesn't matter. First thing you're gonna do is fold it in half, hamburger wise. I had to like re-look up these terms because I'd forgotten the folding terms. Open that up. And then you'll fold it hot dog wise. And then open. And then you can either fold these ends to the center line. So I'll do a crease and show you. It's too hard to do while holding. So like this. So fold each outer corner to the inner center line. Eventually it'll look like this. Awesome. So cool. And then once it's like that, this, you'll fold it back hot dog wise. And this is where you make your cut. And here's the important part about this cut. You don't want to make it on the open side. You want to make it on the side that's closed. Does that make sense? So you don't want to cut it right here because this is the side that opens up. You want to cut it right here. So essentially, I'll do it first. Essentially, you will have like a little slit in the middle of your piece of paper. I know you can do it because I taught a 6-year-old to do this on Zoom. So you go like that. Cool. Awesome. Everyone's doing great. I love this. Okay. So basically then you're going to fold your paper like this and push it inwards, and you'll see it start to form like a little book. And you'll need to push down the inner pages to flatten them. Yep. And then you just continue your folds until it's a little book. There you go. These are very fun zines to make. I make these ones a lot because they're extremely easy. They're also really good for just working out ideas in a constrained but not overwhelming way. You know, it's not like you're trying to fill an entire sketchbook. You're just trying to fill this tiny little thing.
Hey Sarah, can you show us how to do that on the camera? I missed how you folded it.
Oh yeah. All right, so it's like this.
Yep.
And then you push like this, and you'll sort of flatten these, and then you'll fold all of these guys along that center line. I will continue to model it if everyone needs how to do it. Also, it's very fun because you can make them double-sided, which is cool, and you can put stuff in the middle. All right. Once you've got that little booklet, it's very cute. We are going to go back over to the questions. So you're going to use your chosen phone. So for example, I might write like Twilight on the front, Twilight analysis, or I love Twilight, or like whatever it is, and then go through and answer some of the questions. Really, it's like the great thing about zines. Well, there's so many great things, but one of the great things about zines is that they're just like cute and manageable, and we'll take like maybe 5 minutes, and then I'll check in with you guys and see what everyone has. And then once we're done, we'll come back and do some sharing, whoever's interested in sharing. And hopefully people will have movie recommendation ideas for each other. That would be very exciting. So I'm going to pop back over to my presentation where all of the questions are, so you can see them all. Okay. All right. What did everyone do? Does everyone want to hold theirs up? I made a new one about the movie Legend. Drew a weird unicorn on it. Nice. Love it. Great. So I just want to run through some of the questions and see what people answered for them. So for who was on screen, can I get like 3 people to tell me what they wrote? It's a very broad question, actually. Carol, you want to go? Let me unmute you. Oh, wait, can I unmute you? Oh, no, the host has to.
Sunshine, did you want to go? I saw that you unmuted yourself.
Okay, Carol is, I'm gonna let Carol go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Carol, what you got?
I did the movie Garbage Warrior, and it's a
Mm.
documentary. It's got Michael Reynolds, a crew of renegade builders, and the amazing Remy Zitterblatt, who's a civil litigator.
Ooh, love that. I'm looking that movie up right now. That's very cool. So you have all real people doing something interesting and cool.
Mhm.
Anyone else want to tell me what they have for that one?
I'll go.
Yeah.
Probably a movie nobody's heard of, although there are movies by this name. It's probably not the one you heard of. The movie's called Avalon. It's a Barry Levinson movie, beautiful movie. The characters, the people on the screen, is the Brzezinski family. They are Russian immigrants, 3 brothers who immigrated to the city of Baltimore. And it's about them and their families as they progress through 4 or 5 decades.
Oh, that's awesome.
Hmm.
And let's do one more. Sunshine, you want to go?
Yeah, I was waiting for other participants, but because I'm always happy to talk, but so I did Almost Famous, and I was really actually struggling with the cast names because they were all pretty unknown, except for, so the ones I came up with were Kate Hudson, Jason
Mhm.
Lee, and Anna Paquin.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I was also having, it's hard to sometimes think of like sorry, there's a cat in the background. Sometimes for me it's hard to think of like the exact actors when I'm first doing them. Like I did Legend, which is like a unicorn movie from the 80s. And the thing that I remember most about it is like it's a baby Tom Cruise. It's like so little in it. There's like the character of like the girl, like the pure girl who like the unicorns love, and then the unicorns, of course. But it's both a way to think about like who are the specific people in it, but also like what are the sort of characters or the tropes that are being represented in those films, like the pure girl, for example. And
I think
for
Tim Curry played the bad guy.
yes,
Yeah.
which is why I love the movie. Because he's the best bad guy ever. Such a good one. So yeah, and then for where was it set, did anyone have any interesting spots or any places where they were like, oh yeah, I'm gonna look for more movies that are set there? Yeah. Carol, what did you have?
This one's set in northern New Mexico in the Earthship community. It's a story about the Earthships.
That's really cool.
Mhm.
Anyone else?
The one
Baltimore. It was interesting because we were living there at the time.
Baltimore. It's a city with an interesting filmmaking community too.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Carolina, where was yours set?
Mine, like I was thinking, I mean, the movie was Italian, but the movie was just like set in this, I don't know, like totally surrealistic, never-ending convention center space.
Yes.
I don't know. I was just like, it wasn't a place. I'd be like, oh, I want to watch more movies set in Italy because
I
they
mean, I
spoke
would
Italian.
argue, yeah, I would argue that a convention center is definitely like a place though, with like its own weird rules. It's like a casino in that way, right? Like
Oh,
it
yeah.
can be in a bunch of different countries, but it's like a place that is architecturally like very specific, especially like those ones where you like can never find your way around and you can never tell what time it is, that kind of thing. That's really interesting. Yeah. So sometimes even a place that seems like it's not a place, it's a place. Although I don't know if you would want to seek out more convention movies. Maybe.
I don't know. Yeah. But I like this idea of like also casinos seem like casinos, theme parks, convention, like they're all these weird things that I'm maybe drawn to. I don't know.
Yeah. They're like manufactured places that can be they're like anywhere and nowhere at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So places that are like, yeah, I like that. So you could, you could look for fabricated spaces. Okay, that's very cool. Next up we have, how was light used to create the images? AKA, what did it look like? Did anyone have anything that was like, the cinematography really stood out or was super interesting? Or you could even think about it in terms of color. Like some films are very like, some films are super blue. Some films are really warm. Some films are in black and white. Did anyone have anything interesting? Jasmine, I saw your video pop on. Do you?
Hi. So I did my design about the Sound of Music. And so specifically I was picturing that scene where the family is hiding like in the darkness. And I forget the boy's name, like Ron or Raoul or something like that, comes in with the flashlight and he's looking for the family and they're hiding in the darkness. So for that question, that really stood out for me in regards to lighting, because it really sets the tone, like they're hiding in the darkness, while, figuratively the darkness is like the other side and they are the light or something.
Yeah, I also like the idea of like the flashlight is the source of light, which is really interesting, because then you can't see everything at once. You only have this like fragmented way of seeing the image. It's really interesting. Thank you. Janaea, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know if you can. Dark,
dark, moody.
and moody.
I love it.
I always think it's kind of funny where like you can tell they just slapped like a filter on top of the entire movie. Like it's just gray the entire time. Maybe even if it doesn't really make sense for it to be gray at that moment, but they just put that like blue gray filter over the entire movie, so you're just feeling really emo the whole time.
Yeah, it's like they color graded it all to look exactly the same, so you would feel sad. That's a really
consistent.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point too, to think about the way in which like some movies have very extremely consistent imagery, and some movies like The Sound of Music, actually there's like the juxtaposition between the dark place with the flashlight and then like Maria on the hilltop singing and like the blue sky, and then some other films, Twilight, etc., are like, this place is depressing. We need you to know that and feel this way. That's very cool. All right.
It's been a fad lately to kind of put a red and green cast on movies, like The Queen's Gambit. If you see that, has anybody watched that?
Oh yes.
But a bunch of movies. I noticed when I watch, it's like they've been doing that, and it's funny because Janaea is in red and green back there.
That's true. She's got it. Yeah, that's a really interesting point, that there are also sort of like these trends of like color grading, especially now when there's so much color grading. Like there were, for a while, there were a lot of those like dark superhero movies that were like supposed to be gritty and were very like blue and neon-y. Yeah, it definitely is a thing that anyone know about bisexual lighting? Yes, I do. Yeah, there's like so many different little things that people do.
What's bisexual lighting?
Oh, Janaea, do you want to explain?
I think like Euphoria is probably the show that like most like main like popular culture started paying attention to it, but it's really like pigmented like blues and pinks for like the bisexual flag, but it's always some sort of like, it's usually like queer media, and or they'll like put it on a character and then everyone on the internet is like, oh, they're like coded as bisexual because of the bisexual lighting, even though it's not. Like, yeah, it's usually like dramatic blues and pinks.
Yeah. I love this. This is a great discussion on lighting, everyone. Very proud of you. Oh, did anyone have any costumes or sets in their pieces that really stood out? Yeah, there, Joe has the bisexual lighting. Is that from Atomic Blonde? Yep, also a great movie. Excellent fight scenes in that one. Yeah, did anyone have any costuming or settings that really, or like sort of set design that really stood out in theirs? Maybe. I mean, I have an example of a movie I just watched recently that has a very confusing title that I can't remember, but it was a horror movie where it was set in the 1970s, but because clothes from the 1970s are currently in style, I couldn't figure out the time period for the first 25 minutes of the movie. I was like, oh yeah, someone would definitely wear that. So it's also interesting to think about, like, or it's also really fun sometimes to watch movies that are like a period piece that takes place in the 1880s, but was shot in the 70s, and really interesting to see how people like reinterpret the past and then reinterpret it, and how some of them look very fresh and how some of them look really dated of the time that it was made in. I think for the one that I did, Legend, is mostly I could remember that the costumes were just sort of like miscellaneous, old-timey, like not like they weren't, you know, it's a fantasy land, so they're not like setting you in a specific time period, but it was like medieval-ish. And I remember from the set that they just had, it was so much glitter, like they must have bought an entire glitter factory. Like I think about the glitter all the time in that movie. Yeah. Anyone else had anything, any costumes especially? I'm always interested in that.
I would definitely say that glitter is like a must for all movies.
Sparkle skin, yes. There you go. There's a connection between Legend and Twilight, yeah. I mean, it's fantasy, right? It makes sense. Sam, did you have any costumes that stood out in yours?
Well, I did The Breakfast Club, an oldie but goodie. So just for those costumes specifically, they have to be like they just had to be very specific to whatever the scene kid was that the character was. And I thought they did a well job with that, especially with the time. Yeah, that's in the 80s.
That's a really good example of a movie that uses costuming as like part of the characterization. You know, it's like very important how they all dress to differentiate them from one another. Sorry,
yeah, like the costumes define them without them saying, I'm the popular girl kind of thing. Yeah.
You're like, I can see your pink sweater, like I know who you are.
Yep.
Yeah, that's really cool. Anyone else have any interesting costuming choices in their piece of media?
In Avalon, they did a very good job of taking the same place, in and around Baltimore, and moving through like 5 or 6 decades, with the characters changing and growing older. And the costuming on it was outstanding for each of the periods that they went through. It really hung true to the period that they were going through.
That's really cool. I'm very excited to watch this movie now. Sounds really interesting. Yeah, it's really interesting to, because you can use costumes to, tell you what time period it is, to tell you about the person. There's a lot of stuff that you can do with it, and I feel like it's one of those things that it's like in film theory, at least, is like not as important, but that I always really enjoy thinking about and looking at when I watch movies. Oh, does anyone have anything interesting, any interesting sound or music? I mean, The Sound of Music is a musical. But could anyone think of anything that stood out to them from their piece? Sound is, oh yeah.
I did Arrival, and I mean, there's the half of the movie is trying to figure out like what these aliens are trying to communicate, and like really anything like with the aliens is just like it has a lot of like thwomps and like very suspenseful like sounds, but they also like, as they like, the suspense really makes you like focus, and like the sounds really like suck you into what's happening and everything.
Arrival is a really good example. I just rewatched that a couple of days ago, because especially with the everything that's going on with the aliens, they have like such a low growly sort of register, that I think at first I was like, oh, it makes sense why everyone feels like they're very menacing, partially just because of like how it sounds and how that's so different from how things sound to us. Yeah, there's really cool sound design in that film. That's a good example. Anyone else?
Has a great soundtrack.
Which one?
Trainspotting.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about what's the soundtrack? What kind of stuff is film, like what styles of music are in it?
Yeah, I actually haven't seen it for decades, but it's punk music, and just very punctuated. What really stuck with me was the arc of the movie more than anything else.
Yeah, but yeah, I think the punk music is totally, it's like very much a part of even the aesthetic of that film too. That's a really interesting, because that's like the soundtrack part being sort of woven into the rest of the film. That's awesome. Okay, really quickly, sorry, my cat's trying to steal my pen. Really quickly, does one person maybe want to talk about what the arc was of their piece? Sometimes, I mean, I was like, I don't even remember the arc of Legend, except for
Choose life. Choose life.
Choose life. Yeah. The sort of the moral of the story.
Yep.
Trainspotting. Yeah. Anyone else have an arc that stood out to them? Some plot points.
Mine had a great plot, but it can be distilled into innovation versus regulation.
Oh, interesting.
The individual versus the collective, and how that toggles back and forth. And
oh, cool. Sorry. And then for the final question, which is kind of like one of the more important questions, why don't we just go around and say, like everyone who wants to talk, what rang true? Because I think that's one of the questions that I get the most mileage out of when I start to look for other things. So like I said, what rang true for me in Legend, basically the thing I could remember most from that film was the forest at the very beginning, and also this idea that a lot of times you leave home for adventure, only to find out that you want to go back home. That was the place that you were supposed to be all along. What do other people have for their films? Or you could answer the question, what did it make you feel?
I'll pop in there to kind of
Yeah.
keep people thinking. Mine's a documentary, and it's about building those Earthships. And what rang true is the beauty of the overlooked, because this is architecture made out of garbage, and it's stunning, and it's beautiful, and it's transformative.
That's really, yeah, I like that one a lot. That's a great takeaway.
Mm-hmm.
What else we got? We have the beauty of the overlooked.
I can jump in. I was trying to think, because like the film that I chose, it's directed by a man, and it's kind of like a story about a man who is chauvinistic and like follows this woman off a train into a feminist convention. And then the feminist convention, it's like he's just like the only man entering into it because he followed this hot woman off the train. And it starts like all falling apart into like this really surrealistic, dreamlike space where, kind of playing into the costumes too, it was like, you're like, I thought this was real, but suddenly this woman is a hot air balloon. And so maybe it's not real. And then like the end of it, I mean, I don't want to say the end maybe for like people who want to watch it, but it was definitely like a man learns a lesson about how to treat women. And it's still like written by a man and like kind of focuses on his perspective. But I think maybe that's why I like it so much, because he like stumbled upon this like carved out space made for women, and then he kind of like goes through this whole like playground and learned a lesson or two.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So somebody learns a lesson.
Learned a lesson.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. And it's also like, you know, a sort of like, it sounds like it's like a closed community that like an outsider enters. So it's also like a fish out of water story.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think just like a wake up of like how I've been treating women in this. So yeah, I don't know.
Some useful social commentary too. Yeah. Nice. Anyone else? You're just watching me fight with my cat. She really wants to chew my computer cord. Yeah.
I interpreted the question like not what rang through like internal to the movie, but like external, like the experience of watching the movie, like not about the movie itself, that it doesn't need to be good to be enjoyable. Like what you were saying at the beginning, like cinema like has kind of turned into this like, I don't know, like it like needs to be super good, or just like the critique of like film watchers, and I don't know, it's like you can just enjoy like a crappy YA movie and also like established fine cinema. So
very true. Well, and it's also like sometimes the things that sort of like, you know, popular culture does, or you know, like you're talking about the sort of like YA, sometimes YA takes teenagers seriously better than like fine cinema. You know, like there are things that it is doing well, even if it's not doing everything well, or even if it's like very melodramatic, which is also fun. And you can do that in fine art movies too. It's underrated. Okay, great. I think I'm running a little bit over, but thank you all so much for sharing. This is just like a little way that you can start thinking about movies, or also just sort of like an encouragement to start thinking about movies, because I know that even as a person who makes movies, I watch a lot of content that then I can't remember. So even to just take a minute after you watch something and like jot down some notes, and think through like what were some of the things that you liked, or what are some of the things that you hated and you never want to see again, is also useful. But yeah, I really want to encourage everyone to, like, your consumer, media consumers now are incredibly savvy. A lot of people are like much better media analysis now than they were even when I was growing up. And, you know, give yourself credit for knowing what you like. And also thank you all for your amazing recommendations. I know. So I'm going to put my email address in the chat in case anyone ever wants to email me. It'd be a nice break from all the promotional emails I get and unsubscribe from. But yeah, thank you all so much for participating. This is really fun. This is a great way to learn about new things, and also just to think through what are the pieces that make up a film, and what do we like?